Hello, welcome to the India and China lecture for world history. Today we're looking at these regions here that are highlighted. For India, we're going to take a look at their social class. India worked through a caste system. This was very important for determining what kind of job that you would have, who you would marry, who you would socialize with, anything like that, like depended on your caste that you were born into. You can't move up in class. You can't move down. You can move down in class, but um, for the most part, this is still how the Indian caste system still works today. So at the top, you have your Brahmins, which are your priests. Here underneath your Brahmins, you have your Kshatriyas, which are your kings, your rulers, your warriors. Under here, you have your Vaisyas, which are your merchants, your craftsmen, landowners, skilled workers. Then you have your Sudra, who are just your unskilled, like farm workers, servants. And then you have your untouchables. And these people are people who clean up human and animal waste. They deal with untouchable things. They clean the streets, and they're considered like outcasts. They are the lowest of the totem pole. So you're born into one of these, and you die in one of these castes. Hinduism is the main religion in India, well, one of the main religions in India. It originates from the Aryan people who came to India. They were just migrant people who just, traveled around. They didn't necessarily have a permanent settlement. They traveled around northern India. They have the book of the Vedas, which are just it's basically like their Bible. It's just sacred texts and hymns, philosophy, how to worship, things like that. So it's just like the Hindu Bible. They believe in a single force in the universe called Brahman, which is basically like their god, if you will. And they have many gods and goddesses. So Brahman is like the great single force in the universe, and then you have the gods and goddesses that are kind of like creations of Brahman or under Brahman. The three chief gods that we look at are Brahma, which is the creator. You have Vishnu, the preserver, and Shiva, the destroyer. And they're pictured here for you. Hinduism believes in reincarnation. So you die and you may come back as someone else, basically. If you lived a good life and you were, a good person, you were a good priest, then you would come back like as a priest again. If you were a priest who was corrupt or immoral, then you might come back lower on the totem pole. You could come back as an untouchable. So that's all impacted by karma. Like your actions in this life will affect how you're reborn in the next life, according to Hinduism. They also believe in the Dharma, which is basically divine law. It's like the laws that they follow. So here you have the Ganges River. I like to talk about the Ganges River just because it is one of the most polluted rivers in the world, if not the most polluted river in the world. You see you've got all the trash here. They dump garbage in this river. They have crematoriums alongside the river because India is super populated. They're the third most populated country in the world, and whenever people people die, they cremate them. So they have the crematoriums where they burn the bodies along the sides of the rivers. A lot of people will pour the ashes from the dead bodies into the rivers. You have a lot of pollution going into the rivers, and then you have people who will travel to the rivers because they believe that the Ganges River flows from the hair of one of the gods, and that if you bathe in this river, you're closer to holiness, you're closer to Brahman. And so a lot of people will travel every year. It's kind of like their Mecca. Like this is a privilege to get to bathe in this river because it's holy water. So yeah, interesting. So here, another religion that we'll talk about is Buddhism. Buddhism is prominent in India and China, and it's all over the world, but just pretty prominent in those areas. The founder of Buddhism is Siddhartha Gautama. He becomes Buddha, or the enlightened one. Buddhism is all about life in moderation. It's all about living and thinking right. Your ultimate goal is nirvana, and that would be release from reincarnation. So you no longer have to be born again. Whenever you reach nirvana, you basically are entering like your holy paradise. You don't have to live on earth again. So they believe in the Four Noble Truths, which is life is suffering. Suffering comes from desire, and to dissolve suffering, you must control your desires. To control your desires, you must follow the Eightfold Path. So those are your two kind of major religions within India. You also have a few empires that are pretty important in the early history. First, you have the Mauryan Empire. It is the very first empire. It's very centralized. You have the very first king that comes to power in India, and it's Chandragupta Maurya. He's very paranoid about assassination, and eventually he is assassinated. So I guess he had a right to be paranoid. Ashoka is the grandson of Maurya, and he's considered to be like the greatest ruler of India during the Mauryan Empire. He converted to Buddhism and used Buddhist ideals to guide his rule. And so, with the Buddhist religion in mind, he sets up hospitals for humans. He sponsors missionaries to spread religion all the way into China, which is why we have Buddhism in China. So, Ashoka is one of your really important rulers in the Indian Empire, in the Mauryan Empire in India. After the collapse of the Mauryan Empire comes the Kushan Empire. The last ruler was killed off by one of his military leaders. How unfortunate. It's basically like a coup d'etat. They just kind of like overthrew him. The Kushan Empire became a large empire spread around Asia and the Middle East. They prospered from trade between Roman Empire to China. This is known as the Silk Road. Like China has silk as its most valuable product, and so they talk about how much silk is traded along the Silk Road. But during the Kushan Empire is whenever India becomes kind of like a big spot on the map. A lot of people are coming to and from India, or are wanting to like go through India to get to China or to get to other areas so that they can trade. And so this is really big for India as far as like growing culturally, expanding, growing economically. And so this is a really big time for them. After this empire, you have the Gupta Empire. So the Gupta Empire happens whenever invaders from Persia overrun the government and end the Kushan Kingdom. A new state is created in the Ganges River Valley by Chandragupta. They basically try to unite the area by making alliances with other powerful families in the area. And they rule for a time, but eventually this empire also collapses with the invasion of the Huns. So we're not going to go too much further into detail with these. These are just kind of like some general backgrounds. We'll talk more about India, like in more present history. And, we'll talk about India throughout history, don't worry. So some accomplishments, obviously, for literature, they have the Vedas. It's the earliest known Indian literature. They're the oldest literature. They have religious stories and chants and songs and, things like that. You also have poems and stories of the gods that are written down. And so their literature is very, very treasured, very dear for their culture. They also have architecture. They have 3 structures serving religious purposes that house the relics of Buddha. First, you have the pillar, then you have the stupa, and then you have the rock chamber. So this is the pillar pictured here. And I have a picture of the stupa and the rock chamber, I think, on the next slide. So science and math are also pretty important. Astronomy is large in part due to India. They recognize Earth as a sphere and that it revolved around the sun pretty early on. And they also developed algebra. So sorry. Thank you, India, for developing algebra. So here's your stupa, and your rock chamber. And these house the relics of Buddha, so just different things from whenever he lived. So moving on to China, we've got Confucianism as one of the religions in China. Confucius was known as to the Chinese as like the very first teacher. Basically, he traveled around China to convince political leaders to follow his ideas. His followers were faithful. They recorded his sayings. They spread his message. He believed that there was an order in the universe, and if humans acted in harmony with the universe, they would prosper. He believed in the Tao, which is the way. You have a duty and a duty to humanity to be a good person. Your duty is to take care of your family. Humanity is, compassion and empathy for others. You're being a good person to other people. You want to make the world a better place through your actions. So you want to do good things to leave a positive mark in the world. Next is Taoism. Taoism is a system of ideas based on teachings of Laozi. It's very similar to Confucianism because it deals with human behavior, but a lot of followers believe that it's the human's duties to work hard to improve life on Earth. They believe that the will of heaven is not through action but inaction, and so the best way to act in harmony with the universe order is to not interfere with natural order. Basically, let nature run its course, let it be. You don't have to change everything. Sometimes bad things are going to happen, and that's just the way that it's meant to be. You also have legalism. So this one's really fun. So this proposed that humans were naturally evil by nature. You're born an evil person. I mean, you don't have to believe that if you don't want to, but this is just what legalism says. So they believe that a strong ruler was required to create an orderly society. Only harsh laws and stiff punishments would cause the common people to serve the interest of the ruler. So this is someone getting thrown off of the Great Wall. Just a heads up, there's a lot of harsh punishments. You didn't really the ruler who ruled by legalism was not to be questioned, and you were not to disobey their authority. Otherwise, you would endure some of those harsh punishments, and a lot of times they were death. And so, because of that, people lived more orderly. They wanted to please that ruler. They were loyal to that ruler. And because people weren't capable of being good, the ruler didn't have to show compassion to them. So, just an interesting idea. So, we're going to start with the Qin dynasty for China. So Qin is the first Qin emperor who united China and built a system of roads that go through the empire. Pretty major accomplishment for one person. To protect against invaders, he built the Great Wall. He didn't build the entire Great Wall, but he built the northern part of the Great Wall. So the policy during reign is his legalism. If you disagreed, you were punished or executed. So basically, Qin is one of these harsh enforcers. People respect him. I mean, he's obviously able to accomplish quite a bit. He got a lot of roads built, and he built, part of the Great Wall of China. 4 years after he died, his dynasty was overthrown, and his tomb. I don't know if you know the tomb of the terracotta soldiers. His tomb is surrounded by thousands of life-size terracotta soldiers, and it was just to pay homage to him. So the Qin dynasty expanded. This is the wall that he built here. And there's some wall here. You can kind of see the fortified border. So the Qin dynasty is quite large. You have quite a bit. And then it just kind of shows you how China expanded as the time went on. We're not going to get into all these, really. I'm just looking at a few of the high points for you. So here's the tomb of the terracotta soldiers. And basically every single one of these soldiers has a different they have different facial features. They're still excavating some of these. There have been more that have been found. They have horses, there are animals, there are people, and people are able to come and view what has been excavated. You could see around the top here. They're able to kind of look from afar. Next, you have the Han Dynasty. The leader is Liu Bang, or Han Gazu. He used Confucianism as his policy for peace and stability of China. His dynasty lasted for 4 centuries, so that's quite a long time. It's 400 years. He extended the Great Wall west, and so he's able to build upon what Qin had started during his dynasty. Population grew during his dynasty to 50 million people. Many technological advancements, such as like iron casting. They make textiles. They make paper. They start writing history down for literature. Unfortunately, the Han Dynasty declines due to peasant rebellions. So there's a time where a lot of the peasants are not happy with the way that the economy is going. A lot of times, peasant rebellions will pretty much ruin any kind of good. Well, obviously, it's not that great if you got peasants that are rebelling, but typically, that's usually the cause of the end of a great ruler is, peasant rebellions, or like your lower class kind of is unhappy with the way that they are being treated in society. They want better treatment. They want better pay. They want. So here's the Han Dynasty and how large the Han Dynasty was. So if we look, I just showed you the Qin and how it was basically, there's this little area here. The Han Dynasty like triples in size. It's pretty awesome for about a 300-year rule, 400-year rule. But yeah. Okay, so this is it for India and China. You have a few questions on the study guide over in India and China. I'll just make sure that you understand those questions. You're able to find the answers to those questions here in the slide. The next slideshow will be over pre-Columbian America, like the Incans, the Aztecs, the Mayans. And then we'll have a day for the study guide, and we'll take a test.